So what this session is on is bringing brand new technology to our field, and we hear a lot about this in Silicon Valley where I work, but here this is fairly new. So let's hear from each of you real brief what your company does, and then we'll launch into a couple of questions, and then we'll all get out and get some calories. So Mario, would you like to start?
I was going to ask the young guy to go first, but sure, I can go first.
Okay.
My name is Mario Montag. I'm the CEO of Predicto Analytics. We specialize in predicting failures in industrial equipment. Pretty different than what you're probably hearing today in the sessions, more of a B2C consumer data and IoT kind of space. But yes, we're in the predictive analytics space as it relates to equipment and human data that impacts safety related to that equipment as well. So.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Excellent. Stuart?
My name is Stuart Barakin. I'm the CEO of a company called Bioscape Digital. What we do is we actually engage patients when they go into a hospital. If you've ever been to a hospital, there's a lot of data flowing around, but very little of that data is generated by the patient. So we look for interesting and unique ways to engage patients. One of our current solutions right now is actually a bedside tablet. It enables the patient to interact, derive some new information that otherwise would not be available to the health system.
Okay, great. So to make it real, so we can visualize, can you each say what exactly is collecting the data? Mario, for you.
Yes, in our case, we focus on two main areas. We have sensors, rich sensors that have been installed for years in some cases in a lot of these equipment or asset-intensive industries. Sensors that collect the speed of metal going through a process manufacturing facility, temperature, vibration, liquid levels. If you think of all of the sensors that your own car has, multiply that times 1,000 or 1,000,000 as it relates to some of these big industries. Railroads is another space that we work with, so there's a ton of data being generated by railroads, and it is insane how behind they are in leveraging all of that data. As it relates to some of the brands that we've been meeting with this week, they're already tackling these problems. They've been tackling them for some time now. They understand that tapping into the richness of all of that data that's being collected can have significant impacts to the brand, to the bottom line. And in the space that we're focused in, it's just getting started. Yep. So yeah, we're focused on that equipment sensor data, and as it relates to historical failures of that equipment as well. So those are the two main areas for us.
Great. So sensors of a variety of types, which may be in this room as we speak.
Absolutely.
Possibly.
Absolutely.
Yes, this is Georgia Tech. So after all. And Stuart, what about you? How are you collecting your data?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was lucky enough to work for Qualcomm for several years in the mobile device space. And one of the things that I realized is everybody loved the relevant and timeliness of a mobile device. But there's just so much friction there in engaging somebody in a relevant and timely experience. And so we put a tablet into a hospital room. We enable that tablet to communicate with other devices around. And we also enable that tablet to communicate with the patient. So really the patient becomes the center of the healthcare experience versus the doctor, and that's where healthcare is evolving. And so we're a little bit ahead of our time, but we're getting there pretty quickly.
Okay, so a dedicated tablet device in a hospital room.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's this new concept in healthcare, and it's really a concept that I think could go across a bunch of industries. It's this idea of decision support that the patient generates. So let's say you have a parent who has prostate cancer. That patient should really drive the treatment options and the treatment course. And so collecting data from the patient, helping the patient understand his or her options, in this case, his options most likely, and helping drive a decision through data collection from that patient. And so that's really what we're doing.
Good. Well, since brands tend to think of a consumer who is not buying their brand as a sick patient who needs to get better, that's actually an apt analogy. Could you each talk a little bit, and we've got now a little under 10 minutes. We're not going to let you guys be late for lunch. This is important. About what problems your research could solve for brands, and I'm sure you've talked to brands and advertisers and heard what they have to say about that.
Let me go first.
Go ahead.
So by way of example, we've actually partnered with a company called Get Insured. Get Insured runs the California State Healthcare Exchange, and is also the only certified vendor of .gov plans. So everybody's spending all this money and all this effort on trying to get people signed up for health insurance, but they aren't at the point where people actually really care about the health insurance. And so we're enabling that transaction to happen. So our platform enables a patient who's in a bed, who also now really cares about health insurance, to go in and calculate what their health insurance plan and premium might look like. And so enabling brands to attack or touch the customer when it's relevant to them in a seamless manner is really
So
how
solving
we
the
engage.
problem when the problem is happening.
Yes.
Great.
When it's front of mind.
Yeah, exactly in the moment.
That's huge, and we love what Stuart is doing with his team. In our case, some of the problems that we solve, you don't really hear about too often, at least from a consumer standpoint. One plant in Germany was experiencing $22 million a year in manufacturing delays just in making steel. Right, so we're able to predict with 98% accuracy where in the plant they're going to have a failure, what kind of failure that's going to be, and the really, really difficult part of the answer is when that failure is going to happen.
Right.
So we're expecting about a $6 million impact within the first 12 months. That's just to one plant. And this particular client of ours has 100 plants in 60 countries. So that's an example of the type of problems that we're solving. It is very manufacturing, railroad transportation, power generation kind of industrial equipment focused.
Right. But you could apply that same process to, say, a mall, right? Because you can
Absolutely.
have a failure at a mall of promotion, of distribution, of advertising. Some brand spends $20 million on an ad campaign at various malls. It's not engaging. Right, so that's
right.
a failure on site. Last year at the Google Developers Conference, I'm sure you heard about this. The Google Developers Conference is, of course, geek central, right? And all of the latest things happen. What they did was at the Moscone Center in San Francisco, they put 500 sensors in the building, and they measured temperature, traffic flow, floor pressure, air quality, sound level. And there was one other, something like humidity. And all of that data was collected. It's free. Maybe someone like Mario will go grab it and analyze it because that was a gigantic, rich gold mine of consumer data. And that, of course, could be done for a mall, a business, a store, a soccer stadium, where, how are people engaging? How are they flying?
Absolutely. Let me add to that. One of the challenges and misconceptions and lack of results and reason for lack of results that we're seeing is that there's such a huge emphasis, and maybe you guys are seeing it within your own companies, such a huge emphasis on that data collection and speed of processing by Hadoop clusters or technologies or databases that enable that, by visualization tools that enable you to now look at your data in new ways. For us, that's all great, that's all required, but it doesn't really do anything at the end. So our focus and what we encourage companies to do is, what action are we going to be able to take by collecting all of this data, by processing all of this data, by predicting a future event or behavior? If you can't perform an action, you've pretty much wasted your time. So instead of starting the conversation on that data collection only focus, start with what action can we take, and what action do we want the consumer or the plant manager to take in order to make an impact, and then work backwards in this big data Internet of Things world that we're now in order to enable that action. So that's something we're really encouraging the conversation towards.
Right.
Actual intelligence, I love that. That's one of the things that we're focused on. It's the idea of, we're collecting tons of data, but that's not nearly as important as sort of the micro level data or the conclusion of the data on the outcome, and then creating a tool or mechanism to act on that is extremely valuable across all industries.
Right, exactly. Can I ask a question? Are there anybody here hearing this, anything popping into your mind as, I would love to be able to answer a question or solve a problem of whatever if I had sensors in my building, some sort of smart device that could, in the moment, talk to me and my central command and communicate with the environment. So think, like if you're shopping in a store and you're either a researcher or a brand, and your brand or your client's in the store, what of these tools could solve a problem? Anything come to mind?
I have an idea. After
Yes.
you.
Coca-Cola, for example, is dealing with the soccer World Cup going on right now in Brazil. sensors are going to give information on traffic flows and their mood changes to the audiences so they can customize their advertising in real time. So here's an example of a company that's probably doing that.
Yeah, in our space, we're not as consumer focused as many of the brands and companies that are here today are. But
Not yet.
Not yet. We're starting to get into actual wearables as it relates to what are the human-related factors of a train conductor, how much sleep has this person received, what kind of behavior is this person having, and how that can potentially raise the risk of a train-related accident. But you're absolutely correct, right? It's that fast response, that fast action that companies can take by being able to process all of the rich data that's coming from these different sources and these sensors in order to enable that action. If you're not performing that action, you're wasting the opportunity, right?
I think one of the areas that if you ever travel and travel a lot, you go to a hotel room and you walk into that hotel room and you flip open the book and it has information. It's a whole bunch of junk and you look for the same junk every time. But what I'm interested in is not the same thing as what the next person that's staying in that room is interested in. I don't get why hotels don't do a better job of taking this data collection, all this information points, and summarizing them down to me on the micro level in my room. Give me the drinks that I want in my fridge, and I'll be more likely to drink them. Give me access to the restaurants around locally that I'm interested in. Maybe it's Chinese food, maybe it's Mexican food. If you can help me target that, I'd be so much more likely as a consumer to utilize that resource. And so I think there's just worlds of opportunity, and so many companies go along just saying, we got a good P&L, we're doing pretty good, and they aren't really pushing the envelope like they could be.
Right, and then new startups come and eat their lunch because they didn't innovate.
Makes it sound easy. Let's do it.
Yeah. We have a few more minutes. Questions about this. And again, does everybody know what Internet of Things are? This is a very recent term. I'd like to see it more in our industry. Internet of Things is just things talking to each other, learning things, and providing cool information for us humans to learn from and be entertained by. So there has already been an Internet of Things, but it's getting a lot more expansive with faster devices, Wi-Fi, and sensors. Mm-hmm. So large systems in this building. It's a large virtually controlled system. It's been around for many, many years. But now more things will have sensors. Our mobile phones have sensors and geolocation. So the whole way to get real-time feedback is just going to explode.
One of the ones in the healthcare space, CardioMEMS here in Atlanta, which just recently acquired, they got FDA approval. They're monitoring patients with pacemakers in their heart, right?
Yeah.
And so it's real-time data coming out of a physical body, reporting back, so you can now predict ahead of time if this patient's pacemaker is going to fail shortly.
Telemedicine. Yeah, so in my industry, in neuromarketing, or the application of neuroscience to marketing, headset development. So eventually you'll have headsets that will monitor, real serious issues like epilepsy, mm-hmm. right? That can feed back to the doctor, but then there'll be commercial applications, right? We'll have people shopping or just living and enjoying their lives, and so instead of disrupting the moment, let me write down and see what I liked about this. That data will be shipped back to a smart system, mm-hmm. and it will say, you know what, you're really kind of hung up when you get in the shower in the morning. It's not a good experience. How can I, as a marketer, as a brand developer, make that experience easier?
Frictionless.
Excellent. And at Predicto, we are strong believers that predictive analytics that's already embedded in your everyday life, and you may not even know it, is going to have such a huge impact to our society, maybe even bigger than what the cell phone has done so far. So.
I would agree with that. Yes, go ahead.
What are the challenges with data privacy is there? So if you do this predictive analytics remotely versus being on site, where does the data reside for these sensors? How do you do the modeling?
So obviously there are some risks by storing the data on the cloud outside of your own protected firewall. There's a lot less expenses associated with leveraging that data platform on the cloud, but there's a lot of positives that come out of it as well. In our particular case, we're able to provide insights to companies that say, we're seeing that this brand of product under these conditions fails less often. And we're only learning that by being able to store that data on the cloud and compare it across different companies, brands, manufacturing facilities. And that's very powerful, right? So there's obviously pros and cons. There's security, but they can hack into your own firewall as well and tap into the data if they really wanted to. So.
Yeah. Other questions? We have another minute. Any other applications, problems that could be solved? Yes?
I don't know exactly how it would be solved, but one of the things that I always think is a really good opportunity is travelers and being part of the frequent flyer program and understanding the content that's given to you. So I own a ton of content across instant streaming sources, Amazon Video, and Netflix. Being able to kind of give me access to that in some way, and also remember my preferences when flying. I think there's some opportunity there because airplanes and air carriers are in a race to try and keep consumers right now, and all we're getting as the consumer population is additional add-ons, being kind of nickeled and dimed. But I think using some type of predictive analytics about what I liked, what I want access to, my preferences for flying, I think would be a really good place, especially when you consider the fact that you've got essentially a willing participant who's sitting there, and I would be willing to answer a few questions or give you access to, some of my opinions if I could get access to something that's going to make my flying experience more enjoyable. So.
Yeah, I think the light bulb has recently turned on, and people are realizing, oh my God, we can actually be better at predicting someone's interests and probability of purchasing or interacting with us. And unfortunately, there's just limited resources, right? So people are going after their top 3, top 5 problems and solving those first, and it leaves an ocean of opportunities. And that's what's creating a lot of new startups and companies going after and saying, look, I'm just going to solve this problem, and I'm really, really good at this one area. And it's enabling 1,000 companies to serve a brand in a much better way than just one massive organization that can do it all.
I mean, I think that's right on point. If you think about it, I would be much more likely to pull out my credit card and spend while I'm on that plane if it's much more targeted to me, right? And so the dollars that you would need to invest in that system would pay itself back in spades, because not only would the experience be better, but also then you could drive additional transaction volume. And so, again, to me, it's a little bit like, we're okay with the top line, we want to measure the bottom line. Well, let's talk about ways you can improve the experience and actually improve your top line and make it a no-brainer for the airline industry, by way of example.
Right. There's also right now a Sony Betamax kind of thing where which Wi-Fi are we going to use? Are we going to use Type A, Type B, Type C? And where's it going to live in the building? Is it going to live in the thermostat? Is it going to live somewhere else? So that's all being sorted out as well. And then there'll be a giant battle, I'm sure, of Wi-Fi, smart buildings, smart area, and then someone will emerge as the victor, and then that'll be the highway for all this data. So I'm looking forward to that big fight. Well, we are now out of time. Thank you, gentlemen, for showing us the future, and have a great lunch.